Hi, I'm Monica Bennett-Ryan. I stood as a whistleblower against corruption in Australia's Defence Intelligence. I identified and exposed false information being entered into people's files to streamline approval for secret and top-secret clearances that would give access to restricted areas and classified data. This totally made-up information was putting Australia's national security and our military at risk. I am now exposing deliberately planted political propaganda masquerading as Christian doctrine. These totally made-up doctrines are putting Christians and Christianity itself at risk. These false doctrines train us to sit on our hands and do nothing as Christianity is torn apart. They all belong to the end times last days theology and all claim to come from the Book of Revelation. Yet not one of them comes from that glorious book. They are all totally made up. For instance, there is no Antichrist world ruler in the Book of Revelation. The word Antichrist does not exist in Revelation. It is just not there. There is no satanic one world government in the Book of Revelation. Until the end, there are multiple kings and nations, and Satan never rules. There is no terrifying Satan-led tribulation in Revelation. All the tribulation written falls onto Satan and his followers. There is no escape rapture from a messy world in Revelation. There is no special rapture for just one generation of people. There is only the resurrection of all believers, both the living and the dead, on the last day. There is no day after the last day. Each of these false teachings implies that God has approved this satanic chaos, and they totally ignore Christ's victory over Satan. Worse, they condition Christians to believe Satan is so powerful, even Christ can't stop him. What a blasphemous lie. But who would want Christians to do nothing as Christianity is replaced with a godless one-world government? There is only one group in the world trying to set up a brutal and godless one-world government: the United Nations. And here's the proof. Written in their founding documents, we find their real agenda: a single world government. UNESCO is tasked with convincing the people of the world that handing over the sovereignty of their nation to UN control is a good thing. UNESCO is the education arm of the UN, and their job is to familiarise people with this idea. Familiarise all peoples is code for use propaganda. There was no human Antichrist world leader in Christian theology before this charter was written. There was no godless new world order in Christian theology before this charter was written. The aim of the charter was to familiarise people with the UN's concept of a godless, authoritarian, one-world government. Their propaganda worked, but that's all they've got. They're doomed to failure, and here's the reason. Their new world order is the old world order repackaged, and the old world order failed twice. How do I know their new world order is based on the old world order? Well, for starters, their logo is a dead giveaway. It's been around for over 2,500 years, and the similarities are unmistakable. This was the symbol of the old world order run by wealthy elites. The olive leaves did not symbolise peace, but absolute power. Remember the crown on the head of Julius Caesar? The singular goal of the old world order was world domination. The empire stretched from England across Europe to Jerusalem. The first king of England was a puppet monarch installed by Julius Caesar, and Jerusalem was under military occupation. It was under this symbol that Christ was put to death. This logo was not chosen by accident. Its symbolism shows the intention, and placing a target over the entire world reveals they want it all. But the logo itself is not the only similarity to the old world order. There are many more. And here are just a few. At the beginning of the old world order, 50 wealthy elites elected to depose their sovereign king and rule in his place. At the beginning of the new world order, 50 wealthy nations elected to depose other sovereign nations and rule in their place. Those 50 wealthy elites set up a power cooperative and called it the Senate. Following their lead, 50 wealthy nations set up a power cooperative and called it the United Nations. The Roman Senate held absolute control over magistrates, military officers and priests. Likewise, the UN wants absolute control over international law, military, religion and everything else. To gain and maintain domination, fear tactics were critical to Rome. Wars had to be continual. To gain and maintain global domination, fear tactics are critical to the UN. Wars must be continual. And they are. Alongside the UN-instigated and enforced Cold War, with its nuclear testing, arms race, space race, spies, assassins and deadly covert ops, we've had real wars. Continual wars. Since the inception of the UN, the world has not had one single day without war somewhere. The fear, pain, terror and destruction never ends. Without threats and fear tactics, Rome could not hold on to or expand its influence. Without threats and fear tactics, the UN cannot hold on to or expand its influence. As each new nation fell to Rome, puppet leaders were installed to serve the interests of Rome. As each new nation joins the UN, puppet leaders are installed to serve the interests of the UN. Moral decay, chaos, slavery, food shortages, and social unrest were normal under Roman rule. Likewise, moral decay, chaos, poverty, food shortages, and social unrest are now the new normal under the UN. Under Rome, the suffering continued until people said enough, and social resistance ended the rule of the elites. Under the UN, the current global suffering will continue until people say enough and insist the UN be defunded and dismantled. They can be stopped. On the tail of the failed Roman Republic came the Roman Empire. It also failed, but for a different reason. To succeed in conquering the entire world, the UN must avoid both failures, and I don't believe it can. Here's why. Rome tried to control Christians, first by persecution and then by writing new doctrines and forcing them into state-controlled religion. This tells us that the onset of Christian persecution in the West and the introduction of new doctrines is the prelude to state-controlled religion. However, trying to control Christianity was Rome's downfall. It split the empire in half and led to its ultimate destruction. The UN is about to learn that Christianity is not something they can control, and not knowing this will destroy them. They can be stopped, and we can stop them, especially if we follow the way laid out by Christ. Christ lived and died under this symbol and taught his disciples how to overcome, even while they lived under Roman tyranny. What Christ taught back then is exactly what the world needs now, the gospel, and his Great Commission is his blueprint for success. As for Revelation, Christ did not mention a human Antichrist in that glorious book, but he wrote 3 chapters about our deadliest human enemy, the great whore of Babylon. In those 3 chapters, he details who she is, what she does, and her very public demise, which is known as the fall of Babylon. Christ told us clearly that he will not return before Babylon falls, because her fall will be visible to everyone. He told us that all the kings of the earth, the traders and merchants, and all who stand with them will weep and mourn and be terrified when they see her fall. You can read more about that in Revelation 18. The Antichrist world leader lie is a deliberate smokescreen, a distraction put in place by the great whore to prevent us from seeing this truth. She is terrified that we will obey Christ's last command to us and come out from her. Because when we do, it's game over for her. She will fall and we will see it. This is not a time for fear, but a time for faith and going. Come out from her. Go in his name, and God bless.